lifeboat scenario that so many have been trained in since the early 70s, mid 70s, right? 4 people in a lifeboat, you got provisions for 3. Who do you throw overboard? And because we understand the default position of man in a sinful, fallen world versus what we pray is the redeemed state of man through the indwelling of the Holy Spirit and the washing of the water, the Holy Spirit and the Word, the study of the Word, that, old things pass away. We become more involved in, after justification, sanctification. Doesn't mean we still don't have the battle between the old man and the new mind, but we start seeing some of those things lessen, right? And some people who become Christians later in life, you see that big change in their life because they go from being very selfish people, self-centered people, angry people, impatient people, and then become believers. And over time, you quickly see that they're not the same person they were, right? So we pray that for all of ourselves, right? But apart from someone being a Christian, you understand what is the fallen nature of man. And so I didn't have any facts other than that, my friends. That's all the facts I had is, what is the fallen nature of man? What's the default position of most people, aside from the work of the Holy Spirit in their life? Well, it is what I said. Selfish. The end justifies the means. Moral relativism. And so for that very reason, when I would go to the DMV and they'd say, do you want to be an organ donor? I had no data to say anything other than what I just told you. And I would say, no. Because common sense with some biblical worldview told me, I wonder if they see I'm an organ donor, if they might just let me die. Oh, he's young. House doesn't drink. Pretty clear. Look at his liver. Look at his organs. He's a healthy guy. He didn't drink. He didn't smoke. And particularly as I got older, I thought, they might just say, he's lived a good life. We got a 19-year-old down the hall who needs it. And particularly as you get older and older, you start feeling that way, right? And then as we got more politically involved, I thought, well, what if they figure out who I am? Oh, yes, let him die, take his organs. And that's all the data I had, common sense and a Christian worldview and understanding where the culture is going. And I said, no, thank you. Not too long ago, I was sitting in my attorney's conference room. And my wife and I were updating our estate plan, our planned, living wills and all that stuff, right? The trust. And the attorney said, now you guys don't want to be organ donors, right? And I said, no. And my wife said, I don't know. I said, no, honey, we don't. We don't. They will let you die and take your organs. No, your last name is mine. You surely don't want to do this. And we had to have 2 witnesses in the room, to sign these documents. And the attorney had called in 2 ladies. And you should have seen the look on their face when I was being so blunt and so matter of fact. I think they probably thought, this guy is, a know-it-all. What's he know? They seem like really shocked. Maybe they have better faith in their human man than I do. But I was like adamant. No. You're not donating your organs, okay? I'm sorry. So I put my foot down on that one. And I explained why. And I went into it. And I gave them a little worldview lesson. I don't think they were very interested. I think they just wanted me to shut up, sign the papers, so they could go back to their desk. But needless to say, I gave them a little lesson. Well, as it turns out, the old saying, I remember a retired FBI agent guy, Cecil, that was his first name, Yates. Man, how do you remember these things? I don't know. But I cannot remember what I had for lunch yesterday. But Cecil Yates, he was a retired FBI agent. He was in North Carolina. That's where he retired to. He has to have been, I would guess by now he's passed away. But I could be wrong. Who knows? Maybe he lives to be 100. But I remember having dinner one night after I did a concert at a church in North Carolina. And at the end of the service, the pastor and his wife invited me out to dinner with this gentleman in their church and his wife. And it turned out he was a retired FBI agent, as I said. Very interesting, by the way. I asked him, something about, I don't know what I asked about Martin Luther King Jr. And of course, I have a whole chapter on my book, Marxianity, about the worldview of Martin Luther King Jr. and wanting to nationalize the water and the oil and all this stuff, socialism. And I asked him about him, and he started telling me all about Martin Luther King Jr. And I said to him, well, how do you know all that? He said, because Martin Luther King Jr.'s chauffeur was my informant. He knew all kinds of stuff, folks. But I remember that FBI agent. Saying to me in the conversation, we talk about this, talk about that. He said, Brandon, one thing I learned as an agent is trust your gut. Trust your gut. And I've never forgotten that. When your gut, and maybe as Christians, we'd say, when the Holy Spirit convicts you of something, when your discernment is up, don't push it. Don't push it. There are things we do here before we go to our guests, because we're going to have two guests, Heidi, first-time guest, and Tamara Scott, who's been way ahead of the curve on this. But when you do certain things, I hope you do what I do. I mean, of course, you learn this as you get older and you mellow out a little more. But as you do certain things, and as we do things here, we expand here and do things. One of the things I've learned to do is not to push something. Just let it develop and let it come to you naturally. Don't push it. Unless you're 100% sure, you are 100%, then fine. But if you're not sure, just let it develop, watch what happens, and then pray, Lord, if this is what I'm supposed to do, open the door, go before me, let these things happen. And I've done that. Oh, I could sit here and tell you stories where I've done that. Lord, I'm interested in this and having this happen and this project. Open the door for that if that's what you want. And you sit back and you wait, and all of a sudden, boom, you get a text. You're like, oh, and you pursue it, and then get another call or text. And pretty soon, all the doors have opened and you've walked right through them all, right? That's providence, I think. When your gut or the Holy Spirit or your discernment, which I think are all tied together, tell you something, listen. And that's what happened with me with this whole idea of donating your organs. I'm like, no, I have no facts other than what I've told you today. Now, the ladies I'm about to have on, they apparently had gone and done some research, and they had some facts. And now a story that these two ladies have been covering now for quite some time, way ahead of the curve, well, it's all over the place. Because RFK Jr., he's come out, and I put it in the Worldview Report newscast the other night. He's come out, and his HHS has put out a press release on people that are having their organs harvested, and they could have lived. They could have survived, but it was invasion of the organ snatchers. And I don't even know, is there a movie called Invasion of the Body Snatchers or something? I've never seen it. I'm not into sci-fi. I do know there's a book called Invasion of the Prostate Snatchers. And that's a great topic. We've talked about so many people had their prostates snatched away. Isn't this really the same thing? Greed. Oh yeah, get it out, take that out. And many people who should have never had their prostates taken out. I've interviewed doctors about it, medical doctors about this. Well, this seems to be a problem in other areas. Let's grab their organs. And my friends, as we go towards social credit scores more and more, and they can figure out real quick who we are, like they do in China. Hey, look, in China, are they harvesting organs? That's one of the things I want to ask our guests about. Are they grabbing the organs of people the state, i.e. the government, doesn't particularly care for? Are they grabbing their organs? Are they grabbing up the organs of Christians who are in prison for being Christians, and they grab up their organs? By the way, I read a report not too long ago that some of the CCP leaders, their leaders live a lot longer than our leaders. And I have to wonder if that's because if they need a new organ, they just go and they grab it. And they may be grabbing them from Christians who aren't drinking and smoking and are healthy people. Let's go grab the organs of the conservative patriots and Christians that are disciplined people. Now, look, if you want to drink and have a glass of wine or something, I'm not a legalistic guy. I just think one way to keep from being an alcoholic is never start drinking. I'm just not big on alcohol. And there's a lot of us in this audience that are that way, right? And it's going to become pretty evident on under social credit scores who we are. And can you imagine how valuable our organs are going to be? Because for most of us, our organs are in great shape and really clean. And do you think this is going on in China? I wonder why the CCP leaders live so long over there. I've been told it's because they can get whatever body parts they need and keep going. Interesting. Well, this has come out. So let's go to it. Let's start with our guest, our guest, Tamara Scott, who has a show on our network. Tamara, her husband Lowell, they've been friends of Melissa and I for well over 20 years. Well over 20 years. And I've told the story a million times of Tamara and Lowell were vacationing with us. Logan was just a few months old, and we were hurrying up to go to dinner. I put Logan in his car seat, and Tamara put Tamara put Logan in his car seat. And I thought she strapped him in, so I put him in the back of the car, clicked it in. Apparently she hadn't clicked the button, I get him I pull the car seat loose from the base, put it under my arm right there, Parents, you hold that car seat handle in the crevice of your arm, your elbow there. And I'm walking with him to go eat dinner. All of a sudden I hear this terrifying noise of a head on concrete. And I looked down and it was Logan. And that little boy was screaming, and I pick him up and he had a goose egg and it got bigger and bigger. Thankfully it was coming out versus going in, right? Well, there was a nurse. It was actually the wife of the man that had been the president of the National Religious Broadcasters Convention. And we were having dinner with her and some other friends. And that's a neat story. My wife's grandmother had taken that little boy to church. He became a Christian, but she took him to church. He later became the president of the National Religious Broadcasters. But we were having dinner with his wife. He'd passed away. And she was a nurse. She took care of Logan. He ended up being fine. At least we think he's fine. I don't know. We'll be right back.
You woke up with a sore throat and a low-grade fever. You know you are getting sick, so here's your choices. You can get sicker and miss work, try to see a doctor this week, or sit hours in a crowded waiting room at urgent care.
I have a smarter option for you. Open your medical emergency kit. Match your symptoms to doctor-recommended prescription in your booklet and take the right meds now and get well faster.
This is not a first aid kit. It's like having an urgent care in your home. It includes doctor-prescribed medications to treat over 39 medical issues like respiratory infections, strep throat, pneumonia, UTIs, and more.
No waiting to see the doctor and no standing in line at the pharmacy. It's right here.
Every home should have at least one medical emergency kit, and here's how to order.
Go to worldviewhealthcare.com. Your kit to treat dozens of common and serious illnesses is rushed to your door. worldviewhealthcare.com. That's worldviewhealthcare.com.
The emergency kit available at worldviewhealthcare.com. Make sure you don't have to go to urgent care. I got pneumonia. I didn't have to go. I took this last year. Stayed at home. Went to bed. All right, welcome back. So Tamara and I and Lowell, her husband, and Melissa have been friends for a very long time. And yes, Logan is fine. He survived, but it's a fun story because now Logan produces her show every day and works with her every day. That's a fun story that Tamara and I like to laugh about now. We weren't laughing at the time. We were both mortified. We were not laughing. We were scared. We were all praying this little boy be okay. All right, so she joins us, and now I'll let her introduce Heidi. Tamara, welcome. Thanks for being with us today.
Thank you. Thank you for bringing up that story once again,
of
Brandon.
Course. I have to always bring it up. In my defense,
we weren't ready to leave yet. So he was on the floor in the car seat. So I just set him in the car seat, and I probably should have buckled it, but I didn't. Oh boy, when you caught him out of that car, he just with some momentum he went. But as his sibling said, it levels the playing field. If something changed and he's not as brain.
Is she breaking up bad for you or just me, Logan? She's breaking up really bad. Can we get that fixed, guys? No, she's back. Okay, what was the last thing you said, Tamara?
If it levels the playing field and he's not as bright and brilliant, it levels the playing field so the rest of us have a chance.
Well, that's true because he is very bright when it comes to technology and everything else. I always tell him that. I say, you're so smart. Imagine how smart you would be if Tamara and I hadn't dropped you.
Right.
So, anyway.
Or maybe, remember there is the book. What is the name of that book? Iron Man? It's about a scientist. It's true. It's written on a true story. A son wrote it about his dad, World War II era. His dad worked for the government. No one knew it. They were a small group, and they were creating the atomic bomb.
Oh, wow.
His dad was in a car accident as a young child and came out, I don't know if you call it savant or what, but he had such an incredible math academic skill that he was able to help. Actually, he was helping correct, I think, textbooks for colleges as a student.
Isn't that
Yeah.
something?
So
Who
maybe
knows?
we did that for
Maybe we
Logan.
did you a favor, Logan. That's what she's trying to say. I think that helps her sleep at night to think it that way.
Yeah.
Logan says yes. He helps her. Well, tell us about your guest, because Tamara, you are guest. Because Tamara, you've been having Heidi on for some time, and you've been way ahead of the curve on this. Now, I had my gut reaction, right? But you obviously must have had some information that I didn't have. Tell me, before you introduce Heidi, what put you on this so early?
Well, it's not easy to get information that Brandon House doesn't have, right? So I don't know, am I blurry in your, I'm blurry here when I'm looking at it on the monitor.
Well, I
look
have
blurry.
reading glasses on, so you're blurry. Yeah, you're blurry, he said.
It could be the humidity in our studio, to be honest with you. I have to shut the air off when we go online. So anyway, all right. So I have been working with folks in the Right to Life, the Sanctity of Life groups for quite some time. And we have a couple of board members from a group called HALO that is end of life, Right to Life. And, you know, I've done shows on euthanasia for years, decade probably. And so this has been a concern because as you're talking about, population depopulation is a plan. It is a global plan. And so I guess I came onto it through some of those folks. Dr. Heidi Klessig and I were talking last night. She's probably been coming on 3 years now, but she wrote the book, The Brain Death Fallacy. I guess I don't know if you can see it in my blurry camera. The Brain Death Fallacy.
Okay.
And here, so you mentioned, do leaders in other countries get organs? Yes. We know in China, in their prison camps, that prisoners were being, their organs were being harvested while they were alive. It was almost order by mail. You could tell them what you were looking for. And so the RNC passed a resolution probably a decade ago against that. I think the Yazidis were in risk and others in the prisons were at risk for having their organs harvested as almost a tourism industry over there. Now that's different than what we're talking about today. Today we're talking about families like yours, like mine, people who have a child or a loved one who ends up in a crisis situation, and the family gets called in an emergency, or maybe it's the end of a long illness. I don't think so. I think it's usually in a crisis situation. And so you're asked to make decisions with very little information when you're emotionally at the edge, you're in trauma, you're in shock, you're fearful, and they don't give you really all the information. So can you make fully informed consent? And so if we get Heidi on here, she's got some incredible stories being an anesthesiologist.
Oh, wow. Anesthesiologist. Very important. Wow. Now, how do you say Heidi's last name so I get it right?
Klessig.
Klessig. Okay. Dr. Klessig, welcome. Thank you for being with us here today. We're on 74 Christian radio stations and, of course, Worldview 2. So thank you for being with us.
Thank you. Thank you, Tamara and Brandon, both for having me on the program. And I really appreciate your introductory comments, because the reason I'm doing this work today is because I didn't listen to my gut. When I was in anesthesiology residency training, they asked me to go up to ICU and bring down a brain dead man to become an organ donor. Well, I hadn't really thought about that very much. And so I asked him, gee, brain death, is there anything I need to know about this? It's my first time doing this. And my staff man just rolled his eyes and said, just be sure someone has actually declared him brain dead. You know how eager the transplant team can be. Well, I went up there and I found my patient, and he didn't look dead. His heart was beating. He had a good blood pressure, good heart rate. His oxygen saturation was great. He looked just like every other ICU patient I'd taken care of, and in fact, better than most. And in my gut, I knew something was wrong, but I had been taught by my authorities that this man was dead. So I came back to the operating room and I found the staff anesthesiologist who was going to be supervising me, and I presented the case to him. And he asked me for my anesthetic plan of care. And I said, well, I think I'll use a paralyzing agent because, surgeons get lobby when people move during surgery. And I'll give him some fentanyl to blunt any heart rate or blood pressure swings that might damage his organs. And the doctor looked at me and he said, well, are you going to give him anything to block consciousness? Well, I was stunned. I said, well, why would I do that? Isn't he dead? And he just gave me this long, slow look over his surgical mask. And he said, why don't you give one just in case? And he walked away. Now, Brandon, my gut was telling me this is wrong. Something is really going on wrong here. But, you know, I may God forgive me, I caved to my authorities and the push that everyone was taking to take this man and get this case done. And I did what I was told. I took the man to the operating room. I gave him the anesthesia we had planned to do. And I'm here to tell you, he reacted to the incisions, to the bone saws, to the removal of pieces of him, just like any other patient. He required the same types and the same amounts of anesthesia. And, you know, I told this story to a friend of mine who's a pathologist. And, you know, she told me when she removes organs during an autopsy in the morgue, she doesn't need to give any of these drugs. So this is what set me on this journey to find answers. I mean, we really have to understand, as Christians, we should be defining death as the separation of that immaterial soul or spirit from the material body.
Right.
But because we don't have any device to judge an immaterial thing, what people have done for thousands of years, they've used the loss of heart rate, the loss of breathing, and the passage of time. And they gave the person plenty of time. I mean, to be sure that this person was dead. This is where our traditions of the wake or the vigil come about. Good traditions that allow people to have time to grieve. But now the push is to declare so-called death as quickly as possible so that viable organs can be obtained. And in fact, brain death was declared by fiat. There were never any tests, there were never any studies, there was never any evidence that these people in a coma, who up until 1968 had always been believed to be alive, were now somehow dead. A group of 13 men at Harvard Medical School wrote a landmark article saying, you know, it would be really handy if we could just call these comatose people dead, because it would free up ICU beds and it would facilitate organ harvesting. And it is sort of a mystery to me why in 1968 everybody swallowed it. The church swallowed it. The church still swallows it. Whereas in 1971 at Roe v. Wade, everyone knew that the unborn child who doesn't even have a brain yet is alive. But why did everyone believe that someone whose brain simply isn't working very well is somehow dead? It's quite a mystery, but I think it's been passed on the basis of authority. It was taught to me by my authorities, and I think most doctors and nurses accept it on that basis. I mean, doctors and nurses can't possibly personally research everything they're taught. They have to take things on authority. So they're told on authority, brain death is death, and then they pass it along to their patient care, and that's where we end up where we are today. But the thing is, organs, things like your heart, your lungs, your liver, your kidneys, break down very quickly in the absence of circulation and very quickly become unsuitable for transplantation. So organs really cannot be procured for donation other than from someone who is still biologically alive. Tissues, on the other hand, things like cornea, skin, bone, heart valves, are much more resilient in the loss of circulation. And you can, from a biologically dead body, someone in whom the spirit has departed, you can very ethically donate skin, bone, tissues, heart valves. But organs, you still have to be alive for those to be removed. And that's why we're finding these cases now, why HHS is starting an investigation, why HRSA found all the problems, because all this time, organ donors are biologically alive at the time their organs are procured.
Wow. You're so articulate, number one. Thank you. Number two, I want to say to the audience, yes, thank President Trump. Thank Robert F. Kennedy Jr. Because I don't think you'd be getting this in a Kamala Harris administration. So I want to just say, folks, I'm a news guy. Okay, this is what I do. And I just call balls and strikes. And you guys know, I said from day one, there are going to be things this administration does we love and we're going to cheer it. And there are going to be some things that we don't like or we're concerned about. We're going to express it, right? That's our job, right? To be discerning. This is one of those areas, folks, where you should be calling the White House, writing to the HHS secretary and thanking them for this very strong pro-life, ethical stance and press release. Now, Doctor, I didn't even know about the idea of the fallacy of brain death until I stumbled on a video a few months ago. And I'm sure you know him or know of him. A Dr. Paul A. Brin, is that how you say his name?
Paul Byrne. He's actually a good friend, and he reviewed the manuscript of my book. So I know him.
Oh, wow. Wow.
He's been on the Tamara Scott show.
Well, thank you again for holding out. He has a very nice way about him, as do you, Dr. Heidi. And I wondered, because the way he spoke and the way he talked, I thought, this guy doesn't talk like a typical medical doctor. He talks more like a person of faith, the way he talked. And so I don't know what his spiritual background or faith background is, but I was impressed with him because I thought this isn't just your typical, quote, scientist or doctor. You could tell that in his presentation. But I read a little thing where he said exactly what you did, that the brain dead is a lie created by a committee at Harvard to legalize organ harvesting. And he's the founder of the Neonatal Intensive Care Unit at SSM Cardinal Gillon Children's Medical Center in St. Louis, Missouri, clinical professor of pediatrics at University of Toledo College of Medicine, is a member of the American Academy of Pediatrics and a fellowship of Catholic Scholars. So he is the past president also of other organizations. And he's out there saying, you better be careful, folks. And I want to come back to that. What should people be doing when we come back, Doc, for those who have organ donation on their license? Because one of my friends has it on there and they're like rushing to get it off. I want your thoughts when we come back.
Consumers often ask, what should I expect when I take the Bella Grace elixir? And the answer's varied. It really depends on what your health and wellness needs are. I would consider this as your foundational core product for a whole range of health and wellness issues. Let me give you a few examples. If you're a little bit older and you have some joint health issues, some problems with mobility and discomfort, the elixir is going to be your best friend. If you have some skin health issues, wrinkles, hydration, aging, all of those elements are going to be benefited from the elixir, including age spots. Now, if you're in a younger demographic, maybe visual health is where you need some assistance. Eye fatigue, dry eyes, all of those are going to be benefited by the elixir. It's a core product because it benefits so many.
Glad you're with us. Worldview Radio, website worldviewradio.com. The brain death fallacy by our guest today, and it's available on Amazon. Just put in the brain death fallacy and it will pop right up. Tamara, are you an organ donor on your driver's license?
No, sir. I had the same, call it gut instinct that you did. I call it the Holy Spirit, right? I just wasn't at peace with it. So no.
Are you hearing from people that have listened to your shows and you and Dr. Heidi that have it on their license and are now taking it off?
Yes, she was kind enough to speak with a group of legislators from several states so they could learn what they could do in their states and what they could do as far as a brain death diagnosis in their states, trying to make it more of a conformity as to some type of situation that wasn't just someone saying someone's dead. And then here's the heartbreaker, Brandon, is I know people who are in these situations. And once they're in the situation, it is too difficult to try and tell somebody what could or could not happen. It's so gut-wrenching to see a family in that situation. And Heidi's got a couple of stories if you wanted to tell. And you mentioned the other administration. Well, in the latest document from the HHS, they talk about a case, I believe, that the Biden administration had no issues with, but with RFK, they've opened it back up, and there are concerns, absolute concerns, and Heidi can address that as well. But we've got numbers in Kentucky. 70 of these types of operations were stopped, and I'll let Heidi give the medical. I'm not a medical.
You do know you called it the Biden administration. Did you do that on purpose?
Well, I used to do it purposely, and now it just kind of happens.
That's why, just so people know, why did he smile just then? Because I think, did she know she just said, Biden administration? All right, so Doc, tell us some stories here. And I also want, in the process of the stories, give, the moral dilemmas. There are so many things that we perceive as moral dilemmas, but when we interview people like yourself, we find out really quick, these are no longer moral dilemmas. But maybe give some advice along with some of these stories that Tamara's talking about. God forbid you find yourself in a situation where you have a family member that's, hooked up to machines and you're being asked to make decisions. I'm thinking there's a lot of people in the audience right now going, well, please tell me how I should respond. Right. What should I say to my wife? What should Melissa know? What should I know? Because again, she has a living will. I have a living will. We have to make these decisions for each other. So tell us and our audience how I should respond. God forbid we find ourselves in a situation making these kind of decisions.
Okay, which one first? Story or how to respond first?
How to respond first.
How to respond first. Okay. So the best thing for people to do is become aware of these facts ahead of time. And that's the major push of what I do. So I maintain a website. It's respectforhumanlife.com. Be sure to put the word human in there or you won't find it. www.respectforhumanlife.com. And that is an excellent overview of everything we're talking about today. The other thing that I have is a YouTube channel, and I'm working on producing a series of very short videos, 5 to 10 minutes long, on each of the areas of controversy in organ donation. And so far, we have one on brain death, we have one on donation after circulatory death, one on normothermic regional perfusion or organ procurement, one on tissue donation, and the last one is on whole body donation. And these are a very good way if you want to talk to relatives or family. I've made them accessible to the average person. They're not incredibly technical, but they're very well researched and documented. So those would be a help to you. The book is a big help. But my major thing I would tell you is look ahead of time, because when the worst day in your life happens, you're not going to be able to process it all. So please do these things ahead of time. I know nobody wants to talk about death, but it's an important thing. And as Christians, we shouldn't fear it. We need to be prepared so we can help others. Mm-hmm. So those would be some good resources. As far as getting off the donor list, yes, you should go down to your Department of Motor Vehicles and you should remove that from your driver's license. But there's also a National Organ Donor Registry. And if you go to the homepage on my website, respectforhumanlife.com, we do have a button if you scroll down on the homepage that says, how do I get off the donor list? And there we go. And so if you scroll down, you'll see, and you push the button coming up a little further, it will tell you, there we go, how do I get off the donor list? It'll tell you how to get it taken off at the National Organ Donor Registry. I had a funny experience with this recently. People are always asking me how to do it. And I thought, well, I'm not an organ donor, but I guess I'll just go through the process and just see what it's like so I can help others. So I went to the National Organ Donor Registry, and the first page they made me type in all my name and information. And then when I hit, submit so I could go to the next page about getting off the donor list, I got an automatically generated email congratulating me. You've just become an organ donor. Thank you so much. And I'm like, eek, now what have I done? So then I had to go to the next page and unsubscribe, but I didn't get any confirmation that I was unsubscribed. So I actually had to email them, and I detailed that whole process. So hopefully they've fixed their system. And now when you take your name off, hopefully they do send you confirmation. But if not, I have the email address so you can write to them and get written confirmation that you are off, which they were kind enough to do for me. The other thing you'll see on that page is there's also a law called the Uniform Anatomical Gift Act. And this is a tricky law that you need to be aware of, even if you're not a registered organ donor. This law says that if you, in an unfortunate circumstance, would come into the hospital and you're unresponsive and your next of kin or healthcare surrogate cannot be located, and now your wishes aren't known, at that point, you are assumed to be an organ donor, and even the hospital administrator can donate your organs on your behalf. So not only do you have to be not registered, it is important to register your refusal. And so on that page also, we have a refusal to donate card from the HALO organization that Tamara mentioned earlier. They do wonderful work. They also have a wonderful life-affirming healthcare power of attorney document, and they've done it so that whatever state you live in, there's a document for you. So that's another thing. Be sure to fill out your end-of-life papers that you are refusing to be an organ donor. Also, tell your family, tell your loved ones so that everybody knows. And so those things, being off the list and registering a refusal, are all explained on the website. So
okay, now I'm on your site now. We saw how to get off the list. Where do you register for the refusal?
Okay, so if you hit that same button and you look just, yeah, so if you hit that button there, and then the very first thing it talks about is the Uniform right there, the Uniform Anatomical Gift Act. The links are there to the HALO wallet card and the Life Affirming Power of Attorney.
Okay, great. Now for our listening friends, what you on radio, you just go to respectforhumanlife.com. And if you scroll down the page, you're at the top of the page, you scroll down the page about halfway, I would say, and it's in a big box in the center. How do I get off the donor list? Okay, it's pretty big, hard to miss. You click more information, and there, not only do you find out how to get off, but how to register that you don't want to be an organ donor and have your downloadable wallet card. Correct, Dr. Heidi?
Correct. That's right. And if you contact HALO, they'll send you a beautiful printed colored, card that you can have too. So they're wonderful people to work with.
Somebody is asking me, one of our donors to our foundation just texted me and said, I had a gut reaction as well to this. And I thought, isn't that interesting? I think, I'm not saying that non-Christians maybe don't have that, but a lot of Christians, sounds like from what I'm picking up here today, communicating with people also off the air, that they had that same conviction, right? So that's great to hear. One of them asked about the star on your driver's license. What is that star? And the star has to do with your real ID. Now they originally were going to make you get one to get on a driver's license, and we've had a guest on about that and opposing that. But then they pushed it back because so many people don't have it. And some of the airports are saying you have to have it. Some of the airports are saying no. And when you show up at the airport, and I've had, one of my kids do that, they didn't even check, So some of the airports are being very aggressive because they're trying to, I think, intimidate people into getting those real IDs. But it's not a law yet. But eventually, I guess it will be, and people are not going to be able to get into airplanes. Certain federal buildings now you can't get into. I don't think you can go to the White House now. I think that when I was at the White House in May, we were told next time you come, you better have your ID, real ID, because you have to have it now to get into the White House. So again, some of us are going to be forced to do it. Eventually, I think all of us are. But I guess the question is, Tamara, is there going to be any connection between the real ID and the star and donor organs? And as you go to more and more biometrics, I mean, this is going to get, I guess part of the concern is as they go more and more digital, that you get on the thing and you're on it and you don't want to be on it and you're having a hard time getting off of it.
All right. So I don't know if you can see it in the blur, but I'm putting on my tinfoil tiara. I would never wear a tinfoil hat, but I will put a tinfoil tiara on from occasion, right?
Right.
All right. So first off, I want to be clear. What we're talking about and the concerns that Dr. Klessig is bringing out are real. They are not conspiracy. They are happening. We have documented stories of people walking away, recovering after they have been opened up. She had a story just yesterday about someone's breastbone being cracked open, Brannon, cracked open, and this individual was not obviously dead. So this is not conspiracy. These are
And that person
factual.
went on to live life.
I don't know on that one. Heidi, what was the outcome of that one?
Okay, is it time for the story? Shall
Yeah,
we
go
tell
ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. So I'm going to tell you how this started. What was the index case that brought this to the Health and Human Services attention? So in 2021, a supposedly brain dead man named TJ Hoover opened his eyes and started looking around while he was being wheeled to the operating room to donate his organs. Now, his family questioned this, but they were told, oh, that's just reflexes. But a witness on the scene said, he was moving around, kind of thrashing. And then when we went over there, you could see he had tears coming down. He was visibly crying. And whistleblowers claim that even after 2 doctors refused to remove Mr. Hoover's organs, the organ procurement organization ordered their staff to find another doctor to perform the surgery. Well, thankfully, they couldn't find a doctor willing to do this. And TJ Hoover recovered to the point that he went home and was able to dance at his sister's wedding in the following year. But this case was obviously a problem, and the whistleblowers did bring this to the government's attention. So in September of 2024, the U.S. House Subcommittee evaluating this looked at the TJ Hoover case. And interestingly, they discovered that the Organ Procurement and Transplantation Network, who is supposed to police themselves about this, had looked at the case and closed the book and said there's nothing to see here. So that's why the Health Resources and Services Administration did their own independent review that Tamara was telling you about earlier. And they looked at 351 cases of people who were referred for organ donation, but it was called off for some reason or the other. Concerningly, 8% of those 351 appeared that people had donated their organs while they were still alive. And that brings the case that Tamara was talking about. Now, again, the case that I'm about to tell you, relate to you about, was not a brain death case. So I need to briefly tell you there's another way they will declare you so-called dead, which is not at all biological death.
Okay, hold right there. We got a hard break. The computer's going to take it away. We'll come back, turn it right back to Dr. Heidi, along with Tamara Scott. Don't go away.
News is moving faster than ever, and so are we. Worldview Tube brings you 24/7 live stream coverage and now real-time alerts when it matters most. Once you have the Worldview Tube app installed, exit the app and navigate your way to Settings. In Settings, locate the tab labeled Notifications. Select the Notifications tab. Scroll down until you locate the Worldview Tube app icon. Select the tab, and here you can turn on and customize your notification experience for the Worldview Tube app. News doesn't wait, and neither should you. Turn on push notifications to stay informed. Every headline as it happens.
You're watching Worldview Tube, built on the 35 years of Worldview books, documentaries, research, high-profile interviews, and the radio and television broadcasts of Brannon House.
All right, welcome back to Worldview Radio, website worldviewradio.com. Be sure to stay tuned for Crosstalk with Jim Schneider on over 100 outlets, vcy.org, V as in Victor, vcy.org. My guest, Dr. Heidi, the last name is spelled Klessig. Okay, so if you're looking for her book on Amazon, Klessig. Okay, The Brain Death Fallacy. Put that in, it'll pop right up. And the website, again, which I know many of you are going to want to have me repeat, was Respect for Human Life. Make sure you get the 4 in there. Respect for Human Life. I also get human in there. Respect for Human Life. I bet a lot go to respectforlife.com. You're going to go to the wrong place. Respectforhumanlife.com. All right, pick up with your stories, please, Dr. Heidi.
Okay, so I'm going to tell you about a new way, a fairly new way. It was started in the early 1990s called donation after circulatory death. There weren't enough brain dead donors to provide all the organs people wanted. So doctors in the early 90s decided that maybe if you're not so-called brain dead, we could find another way to get your organs. So these patients are not brain dead, but they're not expected to survive, or they've simply decided their quality of life is unacceptable. So their death is planned to occur at a specific time and place so that their organs can be harvested. So what happens is the patient is made do not resuscitate, and that's an important step because these people all could be resuscitated, but a decision has been made not to resuscitate them. And they're taken to the operating room, and they're ventilated, and their infusions are taken away, and doctors monitor them until their heart stops. Now, again, this is a ghoulish way to die. Instead of dying in the arms of their family, they're taken to a cold operating room among gloved and gowned strangers. They're poised to take their organs, and they're allowed to die on the table. And then doctors observe a 2 to 5 minute no touch period to be sure the heart won't start again on its own. And then organ procurement starts as quickly as possible because, as I mentioned earlier, those organs, once the circulation stops, very quickly begin to break down and become unsuitable for transplant. The problem with this is that everybody knows that people are routinely resuscitated after just 2 to 5 minutes of pulselessness. And if you could still be resuscitated, you were never dead. Dr. Ari Joffe in 2007 published a case of a dozen people who, as much as 10 minutes after cardiac arrest, spontaneously regained their own heartbeat without any medical intervention. So we know from the medical literature, people can have loss of heartbeat for 10 minutes and still come back to life. So certainly waiting 2 to 5 minutes, because if you waited longer, the organs would be no good, frankly. 2 to 5 minutes is not long enough to be sure these people are dead. So this is where we get these other cases that are now being uncovered. And if you saw the New York Times article this past Sunday, they had a boatload of these cases that they talked about. But the one Tamara mentioned was a case of a young woman. She was cognitively disabled. Her name was Misty Hawkins. She had a choking accident at home and was brought to the hospital because she hadn't breathed for a while. She did have a brain injury, but she was not brain dead. But doctors told her parents she was never going to wake up, and they offered this type of organ donation. And, you know, her parents didn't want Misty to suffer, and they thought maybe we can bring some good out of the situation. So they consented to donation after circulatory death. So poor Misty was taken to the operating room. They took off her ventilator. It took her 103 minutes until her heart stopped. But then when surgeons sawed through her breastbone, they discovered that her heart was beating and she was breathing. Well, the procedure was called off, and they waited, and something like 12 minutes later, she was declared dead a second time. The really egregious thing about this is her parents were never told. Doctors at the time told her parents, it didn't work out for Misty to be able to, donate her organs. We're sorry. It just was one of those things. The parents didn't find out about this till a year later when the New York Times contacted them for a statement on this story. That's when they learned what had actually happened, that their daughter had been alive when her organs were being procured. The surgeons opened her chest and saw a beating heart.
Is anyone being prosecuted?
I hope so. I don't know for sure.
It depends on the state laws too. That's where our legislators come in.
Mm-hmm.
So are you working on any kind of legislation that people could copy, Tamara?
Well, was it Idaho or Utah, Dr. Klessig, you were working on the definition of the brain death diagnosis?
Yeah, so the way the law is in the United States right now, there are two ways that you could be declared dead. One is the traditional circulatory respiratory standard, the loss of heartbeat, the loss of breathing, and the passage of time. Obviously, during these DCD donations, the passage of time is not long enough. That's why people are waking up on the table during the removal of their organs. The other way is the brain death standard, which again is supposed to be legally the irreversible cessation of all functions of the entire brain, including the brainstem. But I'm here to tell you the way doctors diagnose brain death does not comply with the U.S. law, the UDDA. All doctors have ever done is check for coma, the loss of a few brainstem reflexes, which is by far not all functions of the entire brain, and the inability to breathe when the apnea test is performed. Doctors take away the ventilator and observe for breathing. So honestly,
And then, by the way, that's like a few out of how many? There's like a good, like what, a dozen or more, but they only do a few, right?
right. They in an adult, I believe it's 5 brainstem reflexes. Now, if you think all your brain is doing is 5 brainstem reflexes, I'm pretty sorry for you because your brain should be doing way more than that. But the problem is doctors have no test for inward awareness or consciousness. They can only test whether you are willing and able to respond. And there are many people who are sort of locked inside themselves and they're there, but they're not able to respond. You know, Zach Dunlap was a famous case. He was in a terrible 4-wheeler accident. He had a terrible skull injury. He had brain tissue coming out of his ear. Doctors declared him brain dead, but at that time, Zach was listening to every word. He said he heard the doctors telling his parents, your son is brain dead, there's nothing we can do. And he said, all I could do was get mad. I couldn't scream, I couldn't move, I couldn't do anything. Now, the helicopter was landing with the surgeons to take Zach's organs when his cousin, it wasn't the healthcare team, it was his cousin, scratched the bottom of his foot with his pocket knife and Zach withdrew the leg. So the cousin called the nurse over, look, my cousin's moving. And the nurse said, well, you know, in brain death school, they tell us there's these reflex movements, you know, so we're not going to get too excited about that. Well, the cousin gave Zach another stimulus, and this time Zach pretty much took a swing at him. And the nurse, that one crossed the midline.
The computer's going to take it away. Get it, folks. The brain death fallacy. Thank you, Tamara. Thank you, Dr. Heidi. Take care.
This has been...
And we're back with WROS out of Jacksonville, Florida, and you here at Worldview 2 for another about 6 minutes. So the cousin, okay, was this happening in the South somewhere? Because you know where was this occurring?
I believe it was Oklahoma.
Okay, there you go. Okay, that sounds like a Southern boy. He pulls his pocket knife out to make sure his cousin's, not going to respond, and he does respond. So he wasn't
in a full recovery. I mean, he got married. He has a little girl. He works a job. I mean, this man was in no way dead.
I guess he and his first cousin, I bet he and his cousin are still close.
Oh, yeah. I think he got the knife as a souvenir.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. But, I'm not here to say every brain death dead diagnosis will end up that happy. I mean, many of these people are tragically ill. But don't send them to be, to an operating room to be dismembered to death, right? And I'm not saying that all transplant is bad. Living donation in which both the donor and the recipient remain alive after the procedure is perfectly wonderful and ethical. We have family friends where the mother gave a kidney to her daughter, and the daughters lived for more than 20 years. You don't need to be a registered organ donor to make a living donation to someone that you know, or even a stranger. A nurse in my clinic received a kidney from a perfectly altruistic stranger she never met.
Mm. So the gentleman where the cousin did that, so how did they, when he took a swing at him, I guess the nurse didn't say, well, that's just nerves reacting, right?
Well, when he made the swing, the nurse said, oh, that movement crossed the midline, so we'll accept that maybe he's not dead. And then Zach was able to make his recovery.
Wow.
But the other thing I always like to say, if you're a doctor or a nurse and you've participated in these practices, if you've given a beloved family member to be an organ donor, if you've received an organ, it is no way your fault that you were not told these things. You made the best decision you could with the information you had available at the time. And the love of Jesus and his great grace and mercy covers us all. So
amen to that.
Please, be at peace, go to the Lord with your trouble. But we have to stop this from going forward. We need to speak the truth in love. And the church needs to wake up about this.
100%. So, doctor, tell me real quick, if we run out of time, the computer takes it away. What do you do? Okay, what do I do if we find ourselves in this situation? What questions do I ask? What data do I demand to know?
Mm-hmm. So we're really lucky now. There are some very good organizations that can help you. The HALO organization does have a medical call line, so you can call them and get medical advocates that will help you. We have Life Legal Defense Foundation will give you legal support. I'm sure there are other good Christian legal organizations that do that, but I work very closely with Life Legal Defense Foundation, and they will help advise you how to handle that situation if you're in the hospital on the worst day of your life.
Yeah, it would be the absolute worst day of your life. Well, you guys have been so far ahead of the curve on this. I want to thank both of you. And I think we need to get you back and talk about this more and open the phone lines up. So maybe in another week or two, we could do that and just open up the phone lines. Because I'd like to see what our audience has to say. Because, when you're on 74 stations, you get a lot of people with a lot of experience, not to mention the doctors and the nurses that'll start calling in. So I think we should do another one of these shows. Don't you, Tamara?
I would be absolutely all for it. You cannot talk about this enough because it's such an emotional, traumatic decision for families. And there's so much more we haven't even scratched the surface.
And
So, yes,
a bill.
Yes.
Is there a bill we can start propagating around the country?
Heidi has the letter.
Yeah, I just got 300 doctors, nurses, lawyers, PhDs, and citizens to sign a petition, and we sent it to the Organ Procurement and Transplantation Network, to HRSA, and to the House Committee. We want fully informed consent for everyone becoming an organ donor. I think if people understood what they were signing up for, they would be able to question better than they are now. All they get now is slogans, give the gift of life. They aren't told the facts. So we want fully informed consent for organ donation.
Do you know that we have, just had the 1-year birthday party for my granddaughter, and couple came over, 2 couples came over that are in their early 80s, dear friends of ours. And she went to the hospital with really high blood pressure. She's like 81, but she's out and doing and whatever. And she goes to the hospital with this high blood pressure. I mean, like stroke level blood pressure. Mm-hmm. They did nothing for her. They told her, oh, you go home, contact your doctor. She said, they looked at how old I was and they were not going to spend any time or money on me. They sent me home. And yet it was clear my blood pressure was at a level that was stroke possibility. And my wife has a medical social work background and follows a lot of this stuff. She said, Brandon, I'm convinced that a lot of these older people, they are letting them die, and they could save them. So we need to come back and talk about these things as well. Sound good, guys?
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Look at the book. Look at the book here. The Brain Death Fallacy, Dr. Heidi Klessig. It's spelled Klessig. Okay? All of you should get it. And her website, again, is respectforhumanlife.com. And of course, Tamara Scott's on every day here on Worldview Tube at noon Central, 1 Eastern, right here at Worldview Tube. Thank you, Heidi. Thank you, Tamara. Hey, thank you for watching and listening. Take care.